ages ago, I talked about the W King D8 Mini, the little W King D8. W King D8, of course, is a 50 watt speaker. This is a 30 watt speaker, and it's much smaller than the D8. Thus, they call it the Mini. Whenever a budget speaker comes along, all anybody wants to know is, can anybody dethrone the absolute ruler for budget speakers, pound for pound world champion, the Soundcore Motion Plus, currently available for 75 quid on Amazon. In the UK, I know the price varies a lot around the world, but in the UK, 75 quid makes it a stonking bargain. 75 quid, the 30 watt Motion Plus, the £40 W King D8 Mini 30 watts. So 30 watts, they're going to sound exactly the same, aren't they? Well, probably not. So can we say we've now got a new world pound for pound champion? Only one way to find out. Quickly compare the specs. One major difference is you've got tweeters, and they really seem to be what makes a difference with the Motion Plus. So you've got two tweeters, two woofers, two passive radiators, one front, one back. And that's also different because a lot of these speakers are coming with them on the sides, as is the Mini King D8. Passive radiators either side, full range drivers there and there. In fact, shall I give you a quick look at its drivers? So no tweeters, there is a huge difference. The full range driver is 50mm, same as the woofers on the Motion Plus, but they've, as I say, got the tweeters as well as passive radiators differently placed, one front facing, one rear facing. It's a bigger battery in the Motion Plus, 6,700 milliamp hours, 5,000 milliamp hours. Does that make a difference? Yes, in my testing at full volume, I'm getting 6 hours, 45 minutes. I'm getting 4 hours on the Mini D8. Remember, these are proper real world tests. This is not I'm blowing at 50% or I'm playing at mixed volume. This is at maximum volume. And then obviously, if you're playing lower volume than that, work out your own percentages. But to me, it's maximum volume that I really want to know how long. It tells me how efficient the speaker is. I know what size the battery is. I know how loud it goes. I know what to expect from battery life. Nothing annoys me more than the headline 24 hours battery life. Yeah, but how loud you playing it, mate? What's the size of the battery? How loud does it go? You can't compare speakers like that. Most of these speakers, the budget speakers come in basic Bluetooth codec SBC, as in the Mini. We do have aptX in the Motion Plus. Both Bluetooth 5, both support true wireless stereo pairing. Just point out, there is a bug with the Motion Plus that when you use custom mode and you have a pair of the speakers, one, the master will play with custom, the slave will play with bass up mode. To be honest, it's not that noticeable, especially to me, because my now newer custom settings are more in line with the bass up, but with a treble lift. Both have auxiliary input, both have USB-C connections, both charge 5 volts, 2 amps. The Mini D8 is slightly heavier, 1.2 kilos, 1 kilo. IPX7, IPX6, so you can't submerge 1 meter of water out of the Mini D8, but you can with the Motion Plus. How do they sound? As always, my 33% test takes into account the difference in how loud the speakers play at particular volume. So I volume match them as much as I can first, and then decide that I'm going to normalize them if there's still a big difference in post. In this case, the D8 EQ mode, 20%, normal mode, default mode, 26%, Motion Plus 36% for custom mode, and 40% for its default mode. Default mode is your bass up. Of course, this does not come with an app. You do have a useful, does work app with the Motion Plus. It may be a surprise, but the Mini D8 does play considerably louder than most speakers at the lower volumes. Don't read too much into that as far as the rest of the volume scale goes. But at the lower volumes, if I'm saying, well, I want to give you an idea of how they both play around 33%, yes, I have to put this EQ mode to 20% and that bass up to 40% to volume match them. Mini D8 default mode, Motion Plus default mode, which is bass up. Note the difference in volumes, 40%, 26%, but they play at the same loudness. I've matched the volumes. In terms of bass peak, around 80 Hz, Motion Plus 3 decibels louder. That's a lot louder. Now, in terms of lower bass, 50 Hz, the D8 3 decibels louder. It's flip-flop. The problem with the D8 is that it has a very heavy upper bass boost, so it clouds the lower bass, which is there, but masked by the upper bass. Minus 20, 160 Hz, minus 24 for the Motion Plus. Means the D8 is 4 decibels louder in the upper bass. Overwhelmingly, that's what you're going to hear against the lower bass. Well, bass peak around 77, 80 Hz of the Motion Plus in bass up mode. The other difference is, as always, the big dip. For the Mini D8 at around 9,500 Hz, the D8 does hold up a bit more at the high end, although slightly boosted, and the Motion Plus has a heavy roll-off after around 13,000 Hz, but it's rolling off all the way from 3,000 Hz, even though it sounds clear, and it has tweeters. D8 in EQ mode, very bright, it's rolling off the bass. Compared to its standard mode, it's raising the high end considerably. My custom mode on the Motion Plus, basically the bass up mode, but flattening out the high end, so you're getting more of the high end. It's closer to the original. Custom, bass up. Custom, bass up. The real difference is after 3,000 Hz, you've got still more of the high end retained in custom mode. Against the D8, it's the same as the bass up against the D8. Basically, the D8, very, very heavy in upper bass. Motion Plus has the better true bass peak, around the 80 Hz. The D8 is better, lower bass 50 Hz. Mini D8, a boost around 2,500 Hz. The dip at 9,500. The custom mode on Motion Plus, much smoother, much truer. Also note, 36% I'm playing the custom mode on the Motion Plus against 26% volume for the default mode D8. At these levels, they are matched in terms of volumes. I do think the Mini would benefit by having a single mode that's in between the default mode and the EQ mode. One too bright, one a bit too heavy. However, further up on the scale, it does even out. At these volumes, however, the D8, I have to say, is a little clearer sounding than the Motion Plus. That surprised me. You can, of course, tweak that in the app to your own liking, but I'm using my balance settings for custom mode. There is a significant roll-off despite the fact you get tweeters, despite the fact that they claim that plays up to 40 kilohertz. There is a big roll-off from 12 kilohertz. That plays right up to 20 kilohertz. Is that a big deal? Because, oh, we can't hear that. Well, you know, that range is harmonics and ambience. That range is a matter of worldwide debate. Does it matter? I think the consensus probably is you can't necessarily hear it unless you have really good hearing, but you get a sense of it. It adds to the ambience. In fact, I did a Yas 109 review the other day looking into how Virtual X works. One of the ways it works is to fool your brain into thinking you're getting more bass than you're really getting by only playing the harmonics, and your brain fills in the lower frequency, the original, what would have been the original note. So harmonics do matter. It's not all good news for the Mini D8. It's still, you know, it still dips and peaks, and you're getting a hollow nature. The mids are not great. There's a big dip there. Overall, it sounds fine. It's only if you're really analysing it, as we are here, you can say, oh, it sounds a bit congested. But overall, on a quick A/B listen, you say, oh, that's a bit clearer than the Motion Plus. Surprise to me, maybe a surprise to you. You may not even agree with me. In which case, we need to try it at 66%.
Looks like we've come to the end of the road. There's no point in running away now. I'd rather sleep until the storm is gone. She'd rather be shooting at me now. I know it will end up in anger. I don't think we grew up, we just became older. She's aiming her words, ready to fire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. like a blink of an eye's not enough. She'd rather be staying for days now. I'd rather fix it than mess up again. She'd rather be burning it all now. I know it will end up in anger. I don't think we grew up, we just became older. She's aiming her words, ready to fire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire.
Down to the ground, you're dragging me. It's constantly. No, I won't make a sound. I love the pain. It sets me free. It's wrong, I can't make right. I love the bird below you. Tell myself that this is the last time. It's wrong, I can't make right. Slipping off in the moonlight when I knew the truth. I hurt myself for you. On the ground, I know the truth. I know the truth. Oh, now I'm on the ground. I know the truth. I'm shaking now, 'cause you say those things.
So when you get to these volumes, the Motion Plus now plays louder. So note the volume scales. At these volumes, they are volume matched. Motion Plus has the nicer bass, the deeper bass. The Mini D8, it's all about the upper bass. It's drowning out any lower bass. The lower bass is there. It's just drowned out by the three dominant peaks. 160 Hz, 2.5 kHz, 13 kHz, and the dips in between. It doesn't sound bad, but it's not very well balanced. Default mode on Motion Plus, bass up. The only issue there is a big roll off from 3,500 Hz. Using my custom settings, I can flatten that right out. It's slightly 9 kHz dominant. If it's too sharp for you, you can bring the 8 kHz band in the app down. But overall, far more balanced than Motion Plus. It just sounds better. It's more detailed. There's a nice shimmer to it. It sounds more right. The D8 does not sound bad, but in an A-B, the Motion Plus sounds more hi-fi. The D8 sounds like a budget speaker, which is what it is. So, 66%. We get the real world story now, the differences between the two speakers. The Motion Plus it can be a serious listen, full of detail. It can be highly analytical. You can mess around with the custom settings to get it just right to your liking. You can't do that with the D8. I'm not even bothering with EQ mode at 66% because it's not a serious mode. It would be a niche listen if you want something that bright with that little bass. It's just default mode, I think, that you're going to listen to at 66%, in which case it's just more pleasant on the Anker. The differences are clear. It's not a bad listen, the D8. It's good value for 40 quid. On its own, you'd have a lot of fun with it. But especially in an AB, you hear the congested nature of it. You hear that 160 Hz big bass overboost. You hear a slightly hollow nature to it because of those dips. The mids are not great. And the quality of the high and the quality of the treble is not great. It's not unpleasant. It's not sibilant, but it's not hi-fi at all. It's what you'd expect for a £40 speaker. Well, probably maybe what you expect now, not years ago. It's good value for money, but it's not a match at 66% for the Anker Motion Plus, which is just a better listen, much flatter. If you use my custom settings, but you may not like them, so don't if you don't want to. How loud do they go? Both say they're 30 watts. They're going to go as loud as each other, aren't they? So the Motion Plus with my custom settings, it's the loudest, followed by Motion Plus in its default mode, which is actually the bass up mode. My custom settings is almost the bass up, but with a smoothed out mids and high end. It has a tiny bit more bass than the bass up mode. Of course, this is at maximum volumes. The peak 105.6, 2 decibels higher in the peak with custom settings. A tad more in the bass, a decibel more in the bass. Now, the big thing about the D8, the big 160 Hz peak, but when you push it to maximum, even that isn't enough to keep up with the Motion Plus. Even when it's big boost at 160 Hz, minus 26, it's a decibel behind. And the Motion Plus doesn't have the overboost that the D8 has at 160 Hz. It's simply quieter. The D8 does not go as loud as the Soundcore Motion Plus. Hasn't got the bass. Low bass 66 minus 37. 7 to 8 decibels quieter. It's just basically the Motion Plus goes louder. In terms of default mode, EQ mode is slightly louder, which it's meant to be. It's louder because it has a much stronger high end, which is easier to push than the bass. So a little bit less bass, more high end, you go louder. But there isn't that much in it. A couple of decibels at 160 Hz. It loses in the bass, but it's going a bit louder and you've got a bit more clarity. But the bottom line is, by far, the Motion Plus has the headroom. It goes louder. It's got better bass. So the D8 is good value. It's not a terrible listen. It's quite an enjoyable listen, but it just doesn't go as loud as the Motion Plus. It's not as refined as the Motion Plus, and it doesn't have the tweeters that the Motion Plus has. Yeah, both 30 watts, both go as loud as each other. No, 4.5 decibels louder on average. The Motion Plus, I mean, that's more than doubling the power. That's a lot louder. I mean, yeah, 75 quid currently, 40 quid currently. The only question would be, yeah, well, I could get 2 D8s for the price of a Motion Plus. I've only got one at the moment. I am going to get another one. That's probably another test down the road. So that's the only question. But can the Mini touch the Motion Plus? Not really. Only if you're playing that at very low volumes, then there's an argument. In terms of peaks, like 7 decibels up. So yeah, you'd have to have a niche reason or be heavily strapped for cash to be buying the one Mini instead of one Motion Plus, I would say. Especially when you take into account the build quality it's not great. That's pure plastic. Well, at least there's some rugged, heavy-duty nature to the Motion Plus. So yeah, I hope you got an answer from that. That's the world pound for pound champion, the Anker Motion Plus. Just note there is the bug in stereo pairing where you won't get them both in custom mode. One will default to, the slave will default to bass up. I have to say, as mine is tuned to sound like the bass up, but with a high-end lift to balance it out, don't really notice it that much, if at all. Got to really listen for it to know there's a problem there. It's not like before where it went to bass off, where it was a bass cut and it was ridiculous. So once again, I hope you got something out of my video tonight. Thank you for watching.
UK